Loving the Divorce Podcast? Take it further with Amicable Space, our exclusive membership for people navigating separation and divorce. Get expert webinars, exclusive content, a supportive community, and our Amicable Extras podcast with extended interviews and expert insights. Join today at amicable.space/membership because the right support makes all the difference. Welcome to the Divorce Podcast, where we explore all aspects of ending relationships, separation, and parenting apart. If your marriage or partnership has ended, or you have friends and family who are separating, this podcast is for you. I'm Kate Daly, a relationship counsellor, divorce specialist, and co-founder of Amicable, the online legal service for separating couples. In each episode, we look at relationships and separation from different angles, including the emotional, legal, and social. I'm joined by experts and special guests who share their own unique stories, experience, and tips with the goal of helping people end relationships in a kinder and better way. In this episode, I'm joined by Annmarie, relationship coach and author, to explore the role of fear in divorce and separation. Annmarie begins by sharing her own story of divorce before we dive into how fear and uncertainty can hold us back during separation. She offers practical tips for managing those difficult moments, how to speak to yourself with compassion, accept contradictions in your situation, and take responsibility for your own actions to move beyond the blame game. We also discuss why supporting each other's growth really matters, even when it means the relationship comes to an end, and how fear can fuel unnecessary drama if left unchecked. Annmarie closes by reflecting on how these principles have helped her to create peace and harmony within her own large blended family. If you loved this episode, then please subscribe and rate us on your preferred listening platform. Welcome, Annmarie.
Thank you so much, Kate. So nice to be here.
It's lovely to have you. Thank you for joining us. And I'm really excited to dig deep into the roles of fear and unhelpful emotions in divorce and separation, to hear from you how you overcame them and how you've managed to craft and create what sounds like a really peaceful state of being with a blended family. So I'm super excited to hear from you from a technical and from a personal perspective. So let's start. Why don't you give us an insight into your story? So how did you come to be where you are? Share a bit about your experience of divorce and separation.
I'm giggling because you said what seems to be like a very peaceful situation. And I don't want to disillusion anyone. You know, peace is a process. And it's taken me, like I would say, yes, in this now moment, I'm experiencing a tremendous amount of peace in my life and in my current marriage and in my family system. But it was a rocky road getting here. So what I want people who are listening in to know is it takes work to get to this place of peace. And if anyone's struggling out there, it's not a problem. It's the path. It's the portal to peace. The struggle is actually the portal, and the struggle helps inform where it is we're out of alignment with ourselves. And so in my life, my divorce, which happened when I was 8 months pregnant with my third child, it was very unpeaceful. It was a very difficult time. I was traumatized at the time. I couldn't fathom the idea of being divorced and single parenting 3 small children. And it wasn't what I thought my life was going to look like. It's not what I signed up for. Like, there was so much disharmony I was experiencing. And inside of that disharmony, I was resisting. I was pushing against. I was fighting. I wanted to change what was happening. So I wasn't in a place of acceptance of this is what's occurring. And inside of that, I created so much drama and so much conflict and so much struggle inside my marriage, inside my divorce, inside that relationship, inside my life, and then also inside my family system. So because of all that fear, because of all that resistance, I was really creating a bigger mess than what was otherwise happening.
It sounds like a lot of what was driving how you were feeling was fear. I mean, to be facing the prospect of divorce when you've already got 2 children, you're pregnant with a third, you're at the end of the pregnancy, that must have been terrifying.
It was really terrifying. And what I want to say is that's okay. The thing I didn't realize at the time was I got lost inside the fear and I let the fear run the show. And what I now teach, what I'm now grateful to be able to teach others is how to embrace our fears, accept our fears, allow our fears, invite our fears into the process in a really conscious and gentle way, because it makes perfect sense that I was afraid.
Yeah, it's a normal reaction, isn't it? Of course. Yeah.
Totally normal, but I was even resisting my fear. So inside of all of that, I was letting all the parts of me that were afraid and resistant and couldn't imagine what my life was now going to look like, what my children's life was going to look like. I couldn't imagine all of that. And I didn't like what I was imagining. So I kept trying to change it and fix it and make it be different. And that was not helpful.
And sometimes we do labor, don't we, under the illusion of more control rather than accepting the feelings. And it feels very easy to say. But how do you, when someone's in that place where you were, and it's most people, isn't it, when you're getting divorced and you haven't understood or picked that path for yourself, you feel so out of control and everything is thrown up in the air. What practically can you say to yourself, or what do you do that allows you to accept that fear and, as you say, doesn't allow fear to run the show?
So I love this question because there's like a theoretical way of looking at it, and then there's a really practical way of looking at it. And I've developed a whole system for the practical piece. But what I want to say is really like getting aware, being consciously aware when fear is present is the first and most important step. And what often happens is we aren't aware because we're so caught up in our head believing whatever stories we're making up that we don't think it's fear. We think we're right. So in my case, for instance, my ex-husband was having an affair and he was involved in another relationship and he was doing whatever he was doing. And I was really stuck believing I was right, that none of this should be happening. This isn't what we agreed to. And I didn't realize that that was actually, those were my fears driving my beliefs. And I had to really let go of all that. But the first key is awareness, is really being aware, like I'm afraid right now. What's happening is making me really, really uncomfortable. And stepping into this new unknown, being in this places of uncertainty is driving me crazy. It's literally driving me crazy. And so I offer students and people I work with this one question. This question is just, where am I right now? Am I in a place of love, trust, acceptance, or am I in a place of fear and control? And it's hard to know. It's hard to know when we're in fear because our mind is so tricky. Our mind can trick us into believing we're not afraid, we're just right.
I definitely mask fear with feeling that I'm right. And then that can lead you into very quickly escalating patterns, can't it? And I think about my own divorce, that's certainly what happened in ours. It just escalates and ratchets up the more fear. And you can see that the other person is also fear, but if they're in the same pattern you are of thinking they're right, it just becomes a battle of wills at that point, and things completely spiral out of control in terms of the costs and the lawyers going backwards and forwards and everything else. So it's really interesting that you describe it in that way. That really resonates.
Yeah, I think when you get two people who are afraid, who are unwilling to let go. They're really attached to being right. It becomes then this tug of war, right? So we're both pulling in the direction of I'm right, no, I'm right, I'm right. And then it doesn't allow for something new to arise, something else to come forward inside that. So when we're pulling in our directions, let's talk, divorce, for instance, especially around kids. People are so afraid of losing their relationship with their kids, of not being able to support their kids financially anymore, of another partner coming in influencing kids. There's so many things that the mind is distracting you with rather than accepting. It's sort of like, I like to use nature as a good example because often things happen in nature that are unexpected, but they often turn out to be quite beautiful, right? So much like that, my divorce was very uncomfortable. We ended up going bankrupt. We foreclosed on our house. I didn't have a place to live for some time. Like, it was very, very messy. But I had no idea that it was the seeds that were being planted for the next evolution of who I was to become. So there's all sorts of hidden gifts inside the struggle if we just let go of the struggle. But that doesn't mean that we let go of being afraid.
And if I play devil's advocate here, that makes a lot of sense when you're looking back at the retrospective narrative, doesn't it? So I find myself saying that all the time. I have no regrets because all roads lead to here. And I can't be who I am now without having gone on that horrendous journey. So I can get that when I look back. What do you say to someone who's listening to this in the moment of being, so they're back where you were, 8 months pregnant, getting divorced, homeless by the sound of it? I mean, what do you say to yourself at that point to steady the ship so that you can then move past?
I think you say to yourself what you would say to any good friend, or often I use the example, what you'd say to one of your children, like, it's okay. We're going to get through this. You've got this. I know it's hard. It's really that whole series of acceptance of what is. This is hard and it's scary. Like, we don't want to argue with that. It is that.
Yeah, it hurts. But it's horrible. Yeah.
Yes, it hurts. It's horrible. This feels terrible. And you can get through this. You're going to be okay. It's the both and. And it's reminding you that inside of the struggle, you have the capacity to be with all this. Like, you can do this. And I think constantly reminding yourself and then surrounding yourself with people who remind you of that too, versus surrounding yourself with people who sort of collude around the struggle and that, judging and all of that.
I think that's quite hard, isn't it? Because naturally, some of the people closest to you are the people who collude in that story out of a sense of misguided love or devotion to you. They love you, they want to protect you, so they join the fight. I was just thinking as you were speaking, you used the word and, not but. So this is horrible. It hurts like hell. It's not very nice. I'm frightened. I don't want to be here. And you've got this, rather than but. Because if you use the but word, it's negating the beginning of that sentence. It's overriding it. It's downplaying it. So the powerful use of the word and is really important when you're doing the self-talk to yourself and you're saying those sentences and making them, affirmations almost. You have to use the and word, and language is so important. It's so critical to the messages you're trying to convey.
Yes, I 100% agree with you. And that little word and has really changed my life, because the moment I realized both things are true at the same time.
Yeah. And it's that acceptance of a contradiction, isn't it?
Yes.
It's almost like where we started this from, where you were saying, yes, I am peaceful and it's taken me a long time to get here. And I'm sure peace isn't what reigns every single day and every minute in your household, but it's that acceptance that both things can be true. And as human beings, we hold both things, where it feels like the whole online media world is going the opposite way, of everything being very black and white and polarized. But what we're talking about is this lovely gray squidgy area in the middle.
The squidgy area. I love that, because that's true. And really, it is, we do live in such a polarized world. And that polarization is, in its essence, seeking some sort of certainty or clarification. I think we're all trying to seek that. And there is no such thing, because everything lies in the squiggly middle, the both and. These are two things are happening. And I think as a parent, if I fast forward, now my kids are in their 20s and grown and leading lives, and they're starting to experience their own quote unquote real struggles, right? And the lessons I learned at that time in my life is really help support me in supporting them. Like, yes, you lost your job and it's scary and you're going to be fine, I promise you. Versus this idea like, but you're going to be okay. Don't worry, don't worry. Like, when we tell people not to worry or not to be scared or not to be upset, we're diminishing or depressing their human experience, the thing that they're actually feeling that is very valid. So we want to make space for the breadth of the human experience, that we're going to feel all the things. And sometimes we're going to feel all the things at once. And the other thing I want to say about this idea of peace is I experience more peace in my life than I ever have, but I experience peace inside conflict, inside struggle, inside, disharmony. Like, I can be peaceful when there's disharmony because I've learned to accept disharmony.
Yeah. So it's like I decide who pushes my buttons, and it's the difference between you becoming triggered and being drawn into it and being able to observe it and say, this, we don't agree, we're in a conflict here, but I'm not going to allow myself to be triggered. I can feel the emotions and stay on the outside of getting embroiled by the sounds of it. Is that how you experience it?
Yeah. And I can also be deeply aware that struggle is part of the process of evolving. And, when you think about your, 1 and 2-year-olds and they're starting to walk and they wobble and they struggle and they fall and they get back up, you don't keep picking them up and holding them up, trying to keep them from struggling. You know that struggling is part of learning to walk. So the same is true for us. We continue to evolve as human beings, and the struggle is actually the portal to your growth, to your evolution. I tell my kids and I tell people I work with, like, go find the gift in the struggle. What is it that you're learning about, your strength and your capacity? I had no idea what I was actually capable of until I went through this divorce and I had to face all the things I had to face. And the next thing you know, I'm a single parent with 3 kids, working 2 jobs. Like, I did all kinds of things that I had no idea I was capable of, and that I might not have never figured out had I not had that experience. So I'm so grateful in retrospect. And you're right, in the moment, it really stinks. It's really hard.
So you were telling me that you were 8 months pregnant, about to get divorced, feeling extremely fearful. What happened in the evolution of your story then to get you to this place where you're now able to teach and help other people?
I met my first coach and I got highly educated. I started to see my patterns. I started to see the way I co-created the disconnection that led to my divorce. I started to see my part. I started to take responsibility for my parts and pieces. And I put less attention on what he was doing and put more attention on what I was doing. And I started to see how powerful I actually was.
That's important, isn't it? Because it's hard when, as you've described, it's somebody else's affair. I think people do genuinely struggle when somebody else has the blame label, you've had an affair, to actually then reflect on themselves and see their part in that. And it upsets people, I think, a lot of the time, when sometimes coaches or therapists try and dig deep and go into, well, let's look at your part in this. Because the immediate thing when you're in that hurtful kind of phase is to say, well, this has been something that's been done to me. So how did you evolve past, no, this is something being done to me, to getting to really feel and see your part?
Well, it took time, because that part of me who wanted to blame, who wanted to believe I was, what was happening something's happening to me, not something's happening for me. It took time, right? So once again, I had a lot of beautiful support around me who basically was holding my hand as I moved through the resistance of seeing how this is actually for me. And then I began to open up to go, oh, I can see how, that breadcrumb led to that breadcrumb. And slowly but surely, I started to become more open and willing to look at my parts, and not as blame or criticism, but just as data, just as
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
It's just information.
Yeah. How
And
to not
so,
be back here again. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah. And to really look at like the innocence behind our humanity. Like we are all just fumbling along, trying to figure this thing out. Nobody knows how to be in relationships because our parents didn't know how to be in relationships and their parents didn't know how to be in relationships. And every relationship also has a lifespan. So this idea, this conditioning that we're all meant to get married and live together for the rest of our lives is sort of a crazy notion in and of itself, although it's beautiful and romantic and it's so cool when it works out that way. But it's not always meant to be that way. People are in your life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And when we have to accept and allow for the time to part, every relationship has an expiration date.
Yeah. And that's sometimes a very tricky message to get across, isn't it? Because a lot of religious views would say that relationships don't have an expiration date other than death. And so one of the things we talk about quite a lot now is that we're living so much longer. The chances of having more than one significant relationship are almost a certainty, aren't they? And whether you're married or whether you live together, it kind of doesn't matter. You've still got to transition from being in it to being out of it and bringing your whole self out of it so that you're not damaged or leaving yourself behind. So that transitioning from relationships, I think, is a really underrated skill. And if we could all get better at that, we could be acceptant that some relationships, as you say, last a long time, some very short time. But ultimately, I just think we lack some skills about transitioning rather than going after the holy grail of a perfect relationship. I don't believe in that. I don't believe there's a perfect relationship. I certainly don't believe in the one. I think there are lots of people we could be in very healthy and happy relationships with. I think the skill is recognizing who those people are and then transitioning when those relationships, for whatever reason, have run their course.
Yes, because if you think about it like a parent-child relationship, eventually your children are supposed to leave the home. Like they're supposed to fly off on their own and do their own thing. Yeah, crossing fingers. That's not happening in my case. But if we're not supporting one another's evolution and growth, then we're no longer good for each other and we're holding each other back. And so when it's time to go, it's time to go. And only the two people in that relationship can know if it's time to go, if it's time to stay or time to go. I used to run a course called Should I Stay or Should I Go?
We've got a blog exactly that. Yeah. Is it over? Should I leave?
Yeah, exactly right. So I think it's important.
Yeah. And so you met your first coach, you started to do the self-discovery. What then happened to get you to the place where you are now?
When I started to wake up, I like to say I woke up and I started to see, I was like, holy cow, why didn't anyone tell me this stuff 10 years ago, right? I went down the path. I started teaching mindfulness for many years because this skill of mindfulness and becoming attuned to yourself and becoming present was such an important skill in my journey. And I started teaching in schools. So I taught to young children who I thought really needed this skill to learn to be present and calm. And then I started teaching educators and parents. And I just really got excited about sharing these simple tools that people need to thrive as human beings in their lives. And I just kept growing and I just kept expanding. And I wanted more people to have these tools to support them in building really strong and healthy relationships in their life. Most importantly, and starting with themselves, right? Having that relationship with self was the one that really set me off on my personal and spiritual growth journeys. When I started to really get to know who I was behind my fear and get to know who I was inside my fear, and I could compare the two and see what I create when I'm coming from fear and what I create when I'm coming from trust. Whoa, life-changing.
Yeah. That's a really lovely way of expressing it, but that the difference is like squashed versus unsquashed, isn't it? The creativity, the sense of ambition, you can feel it when you feel that you're not squashed by fear or hemmed in by fear. That's super interesting.
The one thing I'd like to say to people is there's only one thing that we can create from fear, and that's drama. We can only create drama when we're in a state of fear, because when we're in a state of fear, the ego is really controlling the game. And ego is only interested in control. So when you start it's in a tug of war, and someone else is going to start pulling the other direction, and it just becomes one giant drama or conflict. So releasing that is the key to our freedom.
Unpick that a little bit for me then. How do you release it? What state do you have to go to release that fear? Because it sounds amazing. I want it. So how do I get there?
That's such a good question. Well, I have this program that I walk people through that helps. This first piece is awareness. So first I have to know I'm actually in a state of fear right now. And often, the shortcut I give people is anytime there's a conflict in your life, anytime there's any kind of drama between you and someone else, you're in a state of fear, period. Just accept that, just accept that is true. Then you back up. You have this, okay, you have awareness. Okay, I'm in fear. I'm creating conflict. Then you want to go to like acceptance. So we have to accept I'm in a state of fear. I'm creating drama and conflict. That's what's true. So really getting into that deep place of acceptance. And the place of acceptance is I'm afraid. I'm really afraid right now, and not to resist it. Going back to the earlier part of our conversation, when I was so in all that fear in the early stages of my divorce, all my resistance was what was creating most of the problems, not the actual fact that I was going through a divorce. And then once you get into that place of acceptance, what's happening, the mind opens, the heart opens, the body, the nervous system becomes more relaxed. And then we become more deeply connected to our heart center, where all of our intelligence lies. And from that place, we make much more wise decisions and choices. But we have to kind of go through that journey of resistance. Remember when I said I had nice people holding my hand along the path of resistance? People really had to continue to show me, no, there you are again. You're resisting. There you are again. Here's the resistance. And then you get sort of skilled. Your mind gets skilled. Well, it's like, I'm not resisting, but you actually really are, because your mind is so tricky. So you really got to find the people who are willing to show you the ways that you're creating that resistance in the most loving kind ways, but who are really willing to point it out to you. But awareness, first key, and then acceptance is the second key. And then you have to have some willingness to start doing things differently, because as human beings, we create patterns of behavior that are comfortable for us, and we keep doing it that way without even realizing.
Yeah. Well, they become the shortcuts to our lives, don't they? And they're just shorthand. We stop thinking about them. They're fairly automated. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So what kind of patterns, or what's the willingness stage? So I get the being aware, I get the kind of sense that you recognize that you're in the fear, that you then have to accept that you're in the fear. What do you do at the willingness stage? What are you teaching people? What are you expecting of them at that point?
So for willingness, this is a big deal. There's so many ways the ego sort of disguises the unwillingness, right? So there's lots of different tricks. So the mind is sort of the first portal or the first gateway. Like the mind can get really stuck on, he shouldn't be doing this, she shouldn't be doing this, it shouldn't be this way. So often we work with mindset tools, and we really start to break down our belief systems when I work with people, like my job is to sort of be skilled about looking for the ways in which each individual person is holding themselves back from willingness. So the mind is one way. The heart is most likely the biggest barrier because we are so afraid of letting our hearts break. And we so don't want to feel our heart breaking that we will do just about anything to avoid that heartbreak and feeling our sadness, feeling our anger, feeling our fear, that we busy ourselves away from our emotions. And then they sort of get locked and trapped. So another willingness game I play with people is feeling all your feelings all the way through. So there's a number of different willingness games that we can play depending on where it is you're uniquely getting stuck, which is just like, I just want to say to anyone listening in, getting stuck is just our ego's way of protecting us. We're just trying to protect ourselves from feeling hurt and scared and uncertain and all the things. It's not a problem. We don't make any of this problematic, or we recognize that it's not useful or not helpful, or it's not actually getting us the results we want in our lives. It's not getting us deeper connection. It's not getting us freedom. It's not getting us peace, harmony, all the things we really want. But we accept that as human beings, that's just the way of it. It's just what we do.
So it's not wrong. It's about accepting that it's there and having a good old look at it, isn't it? It's like standing back and having a good old look at it and being able to see it in all its glory and then make a conscious decision to do something different.
Yes, and a courageous decision, right? Because the consciousness comes first. Oh, I see what I'm doing here. Like I'm aware, and now I've got to do it differently.
Yeah. That's the hard bit, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to go. I don't know how it's going to feel. Like it's like your kids having on their first day of school. Like every day I've been doing something. I stayed home every day for the last 5 years. What's it going to be like when I walk in that classroom and meet those new people? And so it's scary.
One of the things that obviously you've talked about quite a bit in sort of what you do is the fact that you now have this blended family of 9 people, which is an amazing kind of setup, isn't it? When you think about those stages that you've just talked us through, how did you create that blended family, having a sense of awareness of your fear, of what it was going to be like, your acceptance of that fear, and then your willingness to do different things? How did you have to apply what you've just talked us through to becoming a blended family?
Well, speaking of messy, 9 kids and 3 grandchildren, it is messy. There's a lot of mess. There's a lot of different personalities. We have 4 family systems inside that group. So we're navigating a lot of people's energy, a lot of people's different phases of life. So what I would say is my husband and I have a lot of practice practicing. We practice becoming aware. There's entanglements that my husband has with his kids, with his first marriage, and then his kids with his second marriage. I'm the third marriage. So there's different personality structures. There's different codependent behaviors happening. There's so much fodder for growth in these relationships. And then there's my judgments about the way he's doing things and his judgments about the way I'm doing things with my kids. And so, like I said earlier, it's often not very peaceful, but trusting, like one of the things that I've really had to learn to do is let go of being right, that my husband should be doing something different than he is with his kids. Because we parent very differently. We have very different styles. We have very different, and I'm right about the way he should be doing it. I am right. And he is very, very wrong most of the time. And that's caused just so much disharmony between us. And to be honest, it's really none of my business. It's none of my business what he creates with his kids, to the effect that it doesn't impact me directly or, my life. That's where I get to have a say. But learning to let go and trusting that whatever journey he's on with his kids or whatever journey I'm on with my kids and ours to take responsibility for, and then finding and creating peace with inside that is really been the work that I've had to do in my life. It's not easy.
But it sounds like it's a willingness on both of you to follow that system of being able to observe its imperfections and to be acceptant of that, and then to commit to trying to do something. And I think sometimes we get sucked into the detail of what it is we're trying to fix rather than seeing the system as you're talking about it. When you're talking about it, I feel like the pen is dropping in my mind. It's that ability to stand back and observe and accept what is happening, rather than to be so subsumed by the minutiae of the argument or the bit that you disagree with that you can't see the system that you're creating. And I think that's what I'm taking from this. It's having the skill to be able to step back and look at it and examine it in a much more neutral, maybe nuanced way than we would typically do when we're hijacked by fear or the ego or anything else. The fear and the ego just seem like the evil spirits in all of this, don't they? They're just
well,
working.
They definitely
keep
it interesting. They definitely keep things
true.
interesting.
Very colourful. Very colourful.
I think the thing that I have learned the most is, we have 9 kids. So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of different journeys, and we've had addictions in the family system that have been troubling and difficult to deal with. And we've had college, dropouts, and we've had there's all kinds of things happening that aren't part of the plan, that aren't part of the Rockefeller picture of what a family life is like. And the biggest lesson I ever learned was getting divorced was okay. I grew up in a Catholic family. You don't get divorced. You don't get divorced. You don't get divorced. You certainly don't get divorced when you're 8 months pregnant with your last child. That you don't do that. And I did. And I overcame it, and I could see all the gifts in it. And I could see how getting divorced was perfect for me. It was perfect for my kids. So now when things pop up, the addictions, on the extreme, or, failing a test on the less extreme with our kids, I could see, but the first question I ask is, how is this happening for them? How is this the gift? What is the gift in this? Where is this leading them? And so the more I stay in a place of curiosity, it doesn't mean I don't have boundaries. It doesn't mean I don't, create experiences I want to create inside of what's happening. But when I stay inside the curiosity of how is this happening for this person, for me, for the whole system, what's the gift? Then I can bring more peace to the actual struggle, to the actual, discomfort of the situation. Because let's face it, it's uncomfortable when things like this are happening.
Mm-hmm. And, when you're dealing with children or teens, and you're self-interested question coming here, when you're dealing with the teens, the children of that sort of age, and you're trying to explain, are you being, I imagine the answer to this is yes. Are you being honest with them, and you're telling them what you're doing? I am trying to create a place of acceptance. I am trying to help see the good in this. Or does that just irritate them? So is this something you're just doing, or are you doing it with them?
It depends. So this is such a great question. I'm glad you're asking it, because as human beings, we entrain with one another energetically. So depending on their state of mind and their frequency, their vibration, where they're at energetically, I'm sort of tracking that in myself. This is the conscious piece. This is the part where I have to be aware. And then I'm discerning what is needed in this now moment, right? So when we come from a place of trust, presence, love, that expansive place, we can intuit what is being called for in this now moment. So sometimes, yes, I might do that. Say let's create I'm just trying to create a place of acceptance. I'll tell one of my kids or my spouse or whomever. But if they're not available for that, then I have to shift. I have to become something different. And this is what's so beautiful about women, because we in particular have this gift to really entrain and be deeply connected to our own selves and to others, such that we can create the space for healing to happen and occur. And that happens when we're deeply connected to ourselves. So when my daughter, who struggled as a child, she had she grew inside a very anxious nervous system because I was going through a divorce when I was pregnant with her. It was not a healthy home there. And she came out highly colicky and agitated, and I was agitated. I mean, her nervous system was highly agitated. And so she had tantrums for years. I mean, 7 to 10 years of highly intense tantrums that I didn't know how to deal with. So her tantrum would trigger an inner tantrum in me. And the two of us would be off to the races. Once I learned to drop my inner tantrum and calm myself, she started to entrain with my nervous system. And then she started to learn to calm down because I was actually home base. I was teaching her. So now I get to learn when she's in those states still, she's almost 21, as she gets highly anxious. My job is to get really present, really calm, so that I am attracting that same energy from her and she can remember how to be calm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. I'm loving it. But if I had to put you on the spot and say, if there are people listening who are going through divorce and separation right now, and you had to give one piece of advice or a tip, however you want to phrase it, what was your parting gift here?
Remember how powerful you are and you can get through this, and stay in a state of trust. Trust that you are on the right path, and this is perfectly, the universe is benevolent. It's always got you and it will always take care of you, and trust that.
That's brilliant. And it's a very soothing note to end on. Where can people find out more about you, Annmarie, if they want to look you up and find out more about the system you've been talking about today with us?
Yeah, well, I'm sure you'll put my tricky spelling of my name in your show notes, but it's AnnmarieTereso.me. And that's where they can go and get all the goodies.
Fabulous. For separation and co-parenting support, you can visit amicable.co.uk, where you can explore all of our resources, or you can book a free advice consultation as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, Annmarie. You can find out more about the podcast by visiting thedivorcepodcast.com, or you can stream us on your favorite listening platform. Finally, we'd love to know what you thought of the episode and any questions that you have about this or any other subject we cover. So please do contact us at hello@amicable.co.uk. And you never know, your questions and suggestions might form part of the very next podcast. So thank you. Thanks, Annmarie, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for listening.